And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor here at Whiskey Politics. Find all of our shows at davesussman.com. Also, please subscribe to us at YouTube at Whiskey Politics. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you don't miss any updated episodes as they come out. You can find us on all of our podcast applications, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, as well as the Ricochet Network. And please find us at our new platform, the Range Broadcasting Network. I think I've covered them all, but just type in Whiskey Politics if you want to find us. We'll come up. You know, we often talk about politics, Whiskey Politics. We talk about culture, the culture wars, what's going on. But we're heading into our 5th month now of COVID-19. And, you know, the whole idea of a 14 days to flatten the curve, we'll be back to normal soon. You know, we were talking about the kids going back to school possibly by April or May. Now they're arguing whether or not the kids should go back to school in August and September. And cities around the country are now spiking, whether that was due to the protests or whatever it may be that we see that was happening in the streets across the country. I don't know. I kind of can do the math on that one. But the fact is that the numbers are going up, and we are starting to see that. I don't know if this is a second wave or not, but a lot of people, psychologically speaking, were done with this a couple, 3 months ago. They needed to get back to work. They needed to socialize. They needed to go out and see friends or go on dates or whatever it is. And now, just coming off of the July 4th weekend last week, where everything was pretty much locked down again for many cities around the country, including much of California, unless, of course, you have a certain winery in Napa, California, Gavin Newsom. Yeah, Gavin, you weren't aware of that? Gavin Newsom allowed the one area of California where his winery was allowed to stay open, while the rest of California had to sit at home and not go to the beach or go to fireworks shows on 4th of July. Anyway, I'm not going to get political this episode, because this episode I want to talk about us. I want to talk about the collective us. I want to talk about us as a society and as a humanity, and how many people are responding to 5 months now of being locked down. And it looks like it may go longer, possibly a lot longer. I don't know. So, you know, the fact is that there's a lot of reports, a lot of people are writing about the fact that a lot of people are going into depression right now. It's impacting relationships. We're seeing situations where the suicide numbers are going up. And a lot of people are living together. They may be having troubles. You've never spent so much time with one person. You're not going to work anymore. You're sitting at home, basically trying to figure out which series you want to watch next. Then we're also talking about what's happening with the kids. How are they going to be reacting? A lot of our kids today are missing what we took for granted as rites of passage. You know, hanging out with friends, going to the proms and the graduations and the movies and going on dates and things. When you're younger, they're not doing that right now. How is that impacting them? And is there short-term and is there possibly long-term effects of all of this? And what about relationships, intimacy, sex, dating? I mean, the fact is that, you know, up until this point, you had to be worried about STDs and you get a test, make sure you're okay. But now you could be asymptomatic with this thing. I mean, there's reports and articles that are coming out telling people that they need to use a face mask to kiss. Isn't it romantic? Okay, apparently it's safer now to have sex than it is to kiss. I guess different body fluids are different than saliva. Anyway, we're in a brave new world. So this is going to be a politics-free episode of Whiskey Politics. Well, I'm sure we'll touch upon a couple of political issues. So to talk about all of this, I'm delighted to welcome Kelli Miller. Kelli Miller is an LCSW and an MSW. She is a relationship expert, a psychotherapist, an author of 2 very successful books, and a radio host. You've heard her co-host on LA's Talk Radio and on Sirius XM, and she is also the women's relationship expert at theexaminer.com, and she has done countless seminars for some of America's largest corporations. You can find Kelli with an I, by the way, KelliMillerTherapy.com. For those that are listening, again, that's Kelli with an I, and also on Instagram at Kelli Miller Therapy. Kelli, great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, listen, we're in a crazy world right now, and if anybody said to you 4 or 5 months ago that this whole 14-day to flatten a curve was going to last 5 months and possibly much longer, I don't think any one of us would have believed it. But we're in a really crazy place right now, and this is impacting mental health. It's impacting our relationships. It's impacting our kids. As somebody that's kind of on the front lines dealing with couples and individuals, what are some of the biggest issues that you're seeing happening right now?
So it's been fascinating. First and foremost, I've noticed that my individuals who are more introverted are having the easiest time. They finally feel normal. They don't feel pressure to go out. They're like, oh, this is amazing. Why would I want this to stop? So that's the first thing I noticed that I thought was really fascinating. But I also noticed about 6 weeks ago, a lot of people hit their wall. It was kind of fun for a little bit and it was sort of relaxing. And then suddenly it was like, all right, I'm done. I've had it. It's over. And then with couples, it's the same thing. I think initially it was kind of exciting. We can be together. And then it was like, all right, enough. I kind of want my space. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Who do you think is getting the roughest situation right now? Is it the couples that are basically locked in together, or singles that are experiencing loneliness and lack of intimacy and sex and all of that?
I think singles, for sure.
Why?
But I think couples have their issue, but because it's lonely, and loneliness is really hard. I mean, solitary confinement is punishment for a reason. You can really feel that isolation. So I think that's the hardest, because and there's nothing we can. Normally I would say to my clients, okay, hey, go out, socialize, but it's like you kind of can't. So it's like, okay, socialize 6 feet apart, take a walk, do what you can within the range, but it's still really hard.
We turn on the news, and basically the two major stories right now on the news are COVID, and the number of cases are spiking. And some people are saying it's because they're conflating two different kinds of tests. One of them is 50% reliable, but we are seeing some spikes. And whether or not that has to do with people that went into the streets and protested, or lockdowns being reduced, whatever the reasons may be, there's definitely an increase in numbers now. People were scared, and there's a lot of people that are terrified of this. And then there's some other people that, friends of mine, myself, really kind of like, meh, I'll be careful. I mean, I'll just use common sense. Those people that are really scared, they're kind of in a panic right now. How is this impacting them?
A lot more anxiety, a lot more depression. I think it's the fear of, is this ever going to end? It's like they can't sort of see past that. So that's, it's sort of reminding clients, okay, you have to just stay present. It's where you are today, but it doesn't mean it's going to be forever. So you have to just wind it back to the present, because it's that intense fear of the future, and this is going to be forever.
And it's not going to be forever, but holy cow, we're recording this in July, and we were supposed to be done by now. We were supposed to be back to normal. And so I'm really worried, I think, and we can get back to couples and singles in just a moment, but our kids, many of our kids, their rites of passage that we took for granted when we were kids, sitting in the movie theater for the first time and holding hands with a girl, or going to a prom, or whatever it may be, they're not experiencing that. They're not spending time with their fellow kids, the students and friends of theirs. What impact do you think this is going to have on them? And is it short-term or long-term?
It depends on the age. They're saying that younger kids, it's going to have more of an impact. But I think the importance, no matter what age, is to talk to your kids about it. What is this like for you? I mean, and for me, personally, I actually interviewed my kids I think it was like the first week of the quarantine. And I said, I want to do an interview. I want to get your thoughts, and then we'll do an interview at the end. And it's kind of a nice bookend, but I think it's really important that you sit down, you talk with your kids. What's this like for you? What are you missing? What do you enjoy? What frustrates you? So that at least they have an outlet to talk to somebody about all this, and for somebody to normalize their feelings.
So when you ask them those questions and they respond in certain ways, what's the best response as a parent or a caregiver at that stage?
So the first thing is just to listen, no matter what they say. I mean, you don't even have to say anything back. Nodding, acknowledging, just so they feel heard and understood. Or, and then you can do active listening, which is basically repeating back. So if they say, what's really hard is that I'm not seeing my friends. And then you can say, so what I'm hearing you saying is really hard because you're not seeing your friends. And they feel really heard and understood.
Do you think this impacts them long-term though?
It depends on how long it goes, but
yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I think there are also some benefits that we have to look at, that there is a closeness that they're going to have maybe with their family that they didn't have before. We might be making stronger connections. We might be coming up with different things that we didn't realize, like, oh, I really like this hobby and I didn't realize that. And I was pressured before, but I want to spend my time doing this. So there may be some other benefits too. So I don't know if it's totally negative. I think, it might counterbalance.
My sons have been playing tennis every day together. I mean, they're definitely forging a bond that they may have had before, but certainly not as strong. So that's definitely a positive. But, there's a lot of kids out there, they may not have brothers or sisters, and they may not be, in a socioeconomic comfortable place. And we're starting to, hear stories of people that are depression, suicides are going up, loneliness, lack of intimacy. Maybe they're in a broken family or an abusive family. What are you hearing on that side?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, that is the case. I just hope that people do reach out. That's like, I just have to keep reminding my clients who are feeling this way, you are not alone, even though you feel that way.
Yeah.
So, it's just that constant reminder and kind of putting the word out there that if they do feel lonely, to please check in with somebody. There's tons of hotlines. There's tons of, mental health services that they can get because they do need help. You shouldn't be suffering. I mean, it's a really tough time. So we want to help everybody as much as we can.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to get personal here. Well, not about you personally, but a personal issue for a lot of our listeners. And typically we don't go into these types of issues. This is more of a politics and culture show. Mm-hmm. But, we're in a place right now, it's unprecedented. We are all being impacted this, whether we are married or single, divorced, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And we touched upon it at the beginning here, but I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about intimacy. And human beings, some human beings don't need this, but most human beings need some level of intimacy. Let's kind of break it down a little bit here. Some of the issues that you're hearing from, let's start with couples. Let's start with married couples or people living together. Mm-hmm. I got a question here from somebody that wanted to ask you point blank, what if I need time apart from my husband and I just can't get away?
Right,
I'm
exactly.
going crazy. What are some of the tools that people can use in that regard?
So one of the things that I want to suggest is basically having some sort of gesture or symbol that you have with your partner that you establish beforehand. So let's say it's just like a tug on the ear. And that means, hey, need my space. And that way it doesn't have to be this big production of I'm tired. So it's just a simple, and then it's like, okay, they both people know, okay, need to back off. The other thing is, I think it's really important to, especially if you're in a 1-bedroom apartment or small space, I would establish corners of the room. So you kind of know. So one's going to be sort of the work area. One will be the chill out, relaxing. One's going to be the privacy, kind of don't disturb me. And one is going to be the interaction. I want to play games and that kind of thing. And so you sort of know. So if you can see your partners in the privacy section, it's like, all right, I'm kind of good. So I think it's really important. I'm all about structure and organization. I think that will help make a big difference.
Adam Carolla, you've been in radio in LA, who he is. Adam Carolla said the secret to a happy marriage is 2 big screen TVs and 2 bathrooms.
I mean, exactly, right? But it is, and also I just want to say out loud, it is completely normal. You're in each other's space, you're on top of each other. We're not meant to be this much together. So, I just want to say, of course, and also the other thing I'll say that's super important, it's not the time to evaluate your relationship. This is, so if you can hold off, if you're thinking like, I don't know if this is the person, now is not the time to come to these, amazing decisions. Just wait it out, because this is a very high pressure, high stress situation. So you don't want to make any huge decisions either way.
That's interesting you say that, because a lot of people, they're in the moment right now and they're feeling what they're feeling. Isn't that a reality of their of their true relationship right now being together when normally you don't see each other for 15, 16 hours a day.
But like I said, that's not normal to be in each other's space so much. Anybody. I mean, you know, I've lived with roommates and it's like enough already. Like, so I don't know. I don't think that's the reality of your relationship. I think that's too much time spent together where you shouldn't make that decision. If you still feel that way, you know, 3 months post quarantine, let's talk. But I doubt it. I think it's just too much all at once. And I think that discomfort makes everybody want to be like, oh, I'm done. I don't want to deal, that kind of thing.
Yeah, at the very beginning of this thing in mid-March, they said, hey, 9 months from now, there's going to be a lot of babies, ha, ha, ha. And then like, you know, a month later, they're like, hey, look for the number of divorces to go through the roof, you know?
Either one or the other.
Pick one. Okay, so those are couples. They're living together. They're kind of stuck together. Find your own corners. Find your own space. Tug on the ear. Do the Carol Burnett thing, whatever it is.
I was thinking Carol Burnett.
Yeah, and then what about singles? Let's talk about this. I'm reading articles right now. A lot of people are venting, you know, as journalists or columnists, whatever it is, and they're saying, hey, look, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm going crazy, and I don't want to meet people, and I'm scared to meet people, but I got to meet people. And then there's articles that are saying sex is okay, but kissing is not good, and kissing is bad. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on anymore. We'll talk about that from that standpoint.
I mean, I think you have to do what you personally feel comfortable with. And, you know, because if you're anxious and going out and you're like, I'm scared I'm going to get something, that's not going to work well for either party. So, you know, you really have to get honest about what you feel comfortable doing. That may be for you personally, hey, I'm not quite ready. Let's just talk on the phone. Let's just do video chats. But if you do feel like, hey, I'm okay with that, and I want to do 6 feet apart, and just communicate that with your date. Hey, you know, I'm okay seeing you, but let's do a walk. Let's keep it far apart. I'm not quite ready. So I think it's all about keeping that honest communication open about what you feel safe with.
I don't know what percentage of your clients, you know, are single versus couples, whatever it may be, because I know you do both. You have couples therapy as well as working with individuals. What are singles, you know, how are they coping in this new world right now? Are a lot of people having a lot more, I mean, dating is tough to begin with, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Dating was never easy.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you're hearing from singles right now?
I think it's hard. I mean, I think there's benefits and challenges. And I think the benefit is that you really do get to know someone's intentions during this time. Because if someone's going to take the time to get to know you, they're showing a genuine interest. So I say to a lot of my single clients, that's great. That's good. You're really getting to know somebody. And what happens typically is people go very fast and intimacy happens and the hormones flood your brain. And so you're kind of clouded. And so this really gives you that opportunity to get to know somebody. Do I like this person?
Yeah.
You can see the red flags more clearly at a distance, which is great. So I think that is the benefit. The con is that, yeah, of course you can't feel somebody's energy. It's hard. You want to touch, you want that physicality, all of that. So that's the tough piece. But I think if we can focus on the good things about dating and just really getting to know somebody and asking some real deep questions, I think it can be a good thing.
So the silver lining there is that you get to know somebody. Takes, you know, instead of just connecting and hooking up right away, you get to see a person for who they really are and decide whether or not they're worthy, I guess is right.
Yes. And you can see who's ghosting you, who's, you know, almost immediately. It's, you know, I hear from my clients, it's like, oh, they want to know, can I see you? Can I see you? It's like, okay, but what about, you know, hey, do you want to know my interests? That kind of thing. So you can weed it out maybe a little quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, from the standpoint of intimacy, you know, again, the rules are changing every single day. And the things that, you know, I'm reading about and hearing about is that, you know, public health officials are saying to people, you shouldn't be kissing each other. Sex is even safer than kissing at this point. I guess saliva is more dangerous than body fluids. So are we talking about like wrapping each other in sheets now? Is that what this new world order looks like?
I mean, I think it boils down to trust. Do you trust this person that you're with? And ask those questions. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, have you been seeing people? Have you been around people? I mean, that's okay. It's almost like STDs,
Yeah.
ask, say, hey, I need to feel comfortable. Who have you seen? Who have you interacted with? Because that's what it comes down to. Again, like I said, you have to feel comfortable and safe.
The issue, I think, for a lot of people is like with an STD, you can get a test and know if you've got something, and but this thing is like, well, you could be asymptomatic, right? I mean, that's the scary part about all of this.
I know it is. Well, it's a risk, and I think you really have to know that. Okay, but I'm a big sort of gut person. You go on intuition. You're talking to this person for a while. Do you feel safe? Does it feel right to you? Does it feel like, all right, I'm willing to sort of, I don't know, take this calculated risk. They haven't been around people. You also have to weigh your mental health. That's another big thing for me. It's like, if it's going to give you anxiety and make you crazy to go out with people, don't do it. But if it's also like you're so lonely, you feel so isolated, I don't want people to go into a depression either. So I think it is really that balance of what you need.
You're in an industry where you are working with people. I mean, you're in a confined space. Are you guys doing the mask thing in therapy?
No, so I'm doing just via Zoom or FaceTime.
Oh, you're not even meeting with people now.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's the other thing. I need to see people's expressions. They need to see mine. If I were in an office with you with a mask, I couldn't tell. Are you crying? Are you happy? Are you, it's actually better doing over video because I can see more.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. This just happened 2 hours ago. It's a true story. I was at Trader Joe's buying, I was at the salad aisle, whatever, getting some things. And I look over and I see a friend, one of my son's friend's moms. And I said, hey, how's it going? She looked at me. She goes, great. How you doing? We're both wearing our masks. And I said, good. And we spoke for about like 3 or 4 minutes, BS. And then I said, so where's Rachel going to school in the fall? And she did like a 3 Mississippi on me.
Oh my God.
She goes, Sean? And I look at her and I go, Julie? And she goes, and I go, no. And she goes, no. And we both lowered our face masks for a minute. Completely different people than we expected.
That's great. That's it.
Her 50% above the lips, identical, and apparently me too.
Yep. Well, I noticed that when I'm on my iPhone, it can't recognize my face with the mask. With the Face ID recognition, it can't do it with a mask. So yeah, you just look so different.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Great story.
Yeah. So you've got couples that they're in their home together, whatever the size of the home may be right now. They're coping. They're just trying to get by. They're trying to take care of the kids and do their thing. Talk to me a little bit. I was stunned a couple of weeks ago. I read an article about James Carville and Mary Matlin. James Carville is the Clinton guy. Mary Matlin was the Bush girl. They both worked in those administrations. They are complete like political hacks representing each of their own sides. And you've seen like James Carville spitting at the camera at MSNBC and Mary Matlin, over at Fox. They got married, right? They got married like 20 plus years ago, whenever it was. And they were the quintessential, well, if they could get together and get married, then, it's not all that bad. Just learned that they just got divorced. Oh, wow. And that was a stunner to me.
Yeah.
So we're in one of the most politically divided times ever. I don't think any of us were alive in the Civil War. So I'm going to say in our lifetimes, but maybe ever. And you've got people that represent both sides of a political divide living together. And one of the things that I've noticed about this period of time that we're in is that the vitriol right now towards this president or the candidate running against this president, whatever it may be, is at a fever pitch. How do you, first of all, are you seeing that with couples? I know you just wrote an article about it.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about that and how that impacts relationships and marriages and some of the coping skills that you recommend.
Sure. So it's sort of funny. I haven't seen it as much with couples, surprisingly, as I have with friends, but it's the same. It's a relationship. So I can speak in general about, relationships and how to deal with that. I think the first thing is that I think people go in with an agenda. I'm going to convince this person of my point. They have to see it. And so, the first thing I would say is, go and just listen to the other person and have them do the same. Really, the goal is to learn why they're feeling that way. And I think that changes everything. Your mindset versus going and being like, okay, I'm going to try to convince this person, I'm going to change their opinion, I'm right, they're wrong, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of challenging yourself. What can I learn from this? You both obviously feel strongly about it. So why does this person feel so strongly? And really trying to go in with a non-judgmental stance. And it's very hard, especially if you feel very strongly about it. But really this is a work on yourself of really getting in there and saying, I'm going to be non-judgmental. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to use this opportunity to learn, to grow, that type of thing. And then you also have to be mature enough to know where it's getting too heated. And if it's getting too heated and you feel like, okay, I really can't have this conversation, say, hey, no, I think we're just going to agree to disagree. Let's, table this and we'll talk about it later, or we'll talk about something else. I think it's those type of things that help.
What if epithets are thrown out? What if you're in love with somebody and they represent a side of the argument that believes anybody that disagrees with them are racist and bigots, and you start getting that? And I mean, how do you cope with that? How do you come back from that?
You have to remember why you were together in the first place, and so obviously you have some common interests, you have something that you love about the other person. So I think it's bringing it back to that of like, okay, we obviously disagree on this. Where do we stand common ground? Let's get back to that, because after all, the relationship is more important than these other topics that you're talking about. So you just need to come back to that.
Okay. In the heat of the moment, it's got to be hard to do that, right? Because you're passionate and we're dealing with some of the most divisive issues of our time. And coping with disagreement in a relationship in that moment requires somebody to step above it. And you would hope both people would be able to do that. But what if only one does?
Only one. I mean, I think that if I'm sitting down with a couple right now, I would say, okay, obviously this is an issue. So what we have to establish right now is that it sounds like you both are saying things out of anger during this topic. And so we just need to establish it, that's completely out of anger. And we need to sort of put that aside when you hear that, just knowing that, okay, this is coming from heated emotions. So I think it's establishing those ground rules beforehand too, of knowing that, hey, I know it sounds like I'm really meaning this, but I'm really heated. So it's that reminder, because we all say things out of anger we don't mean. So we just need to really reinforce that.
So are you like suggesting a timeout or
Sure, absolutely.
a pause?
I'm huge on timeouts. Absolutely.
Okay.
I always say to couples, when you get to about a 6, that's when you raise your hand. And my rule about timeout is the person who calls it is then the person who then takes the break and then says, okay, hey, I'm ready to reconvene. Because we don't want to just leave it open-ended where it's like timeout and then you never hear again. Yeah. So, but yes, I'm all about that. I think that both people are more receptive after timeouts. You obviously are both heated. Even if one is more, it's like, the other person isn't as receptive anyway. So I think timeouts are a great idea.
I get a sense that you see with married couples that this isn't so much of an issue as it is with friends. People are unfriending each other every single day now on social media, and which is really kind of the water cooler now of our generation, I suppose.
Yes.
How do you deal with that with friends?
I mean, I think that I've really talked to them about what is it triggering in them? What's it triggering in you? Is it that you thought this person was different? Can you just look at how they feel, as an isolated sort of incident or situation rather than how they are as a friend to you? And again, it sort of comes back to, that focus. Obviously you were friends for some reason. So can we bring it back to why you were friends before, maybe, I think that's the thing is like, look, no one's going to be perfect. No one's going to operate perfectly how, we want them to be. So it's recognizing, okay, but does, the other things that this friend do for me or our friendship sort of override their feeling about this issue? And that's usually the case. I mean, especially if you've been lifelong friends for a long time, it's like, okay, so obviously they feel differently in this case, but it doesn't represent them as a whole. We have to sort of separate that.
I find, one of the things that helps in those situations, because I've got friends on all sides of the aisle, okay? Yeah. And I don't judge people based upon their politics. I judge them whether or not they're a decent person or you're an asshole.
Right.
and I'm not going to hang out with you if you are.
Yeah.
But I try to find, commonalities with people that I may disagree with politically. Otherwise, I wouldn't be friends with them anyway. Go
Sure.
hiking, mountain climbing, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And so, is that something that people? I mean, again, we're kind of locked down right now for 4 or 5
Right.
months, so people are more or less seeing each other through social media,
Yeah.
and I think everybody's kind of on their last nerve right now.
Yes.
So normally we could find, go
Now,
play basketball, whatever, or go drink a
Mhm.
glass of wine. Now, what do we do?
Yes. So one of my things is less social media. I mean,
Okay.
and it's so funny because I literally just had a client today tell me they were kind of depressed. And I was like, more so this week. I said, well, what's different? He said, well, I've been on social media a lot more. And it was about his friends. It's, seeing politics that he didn't agree upon. And so it's like, okay, what's the answer? It's less of that, because obviously that's upsetting and seeing that. So I think we need to do a little bit less of that and do more of what brings you joy. Because right now it might not be looking to your friend's social media, seeing that, but it's more about what brings you joy and what brings you excitement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think bringing also an open mind to relationships and people that you're meeting or are in relationships with or have known for quite some time. I know friends of mine that are the opposite of me politically, and we always got along. But yeah. I find that some of those relationships are now being strained because people are so invested in the politics of the moment.
Yes.
How do you listen? I don't try to shove down my politics, through, to my friends in any way. In fact, when I go out, I try not to talk politics. I have to do this. So, but for those people that look at something and see something that you're associated with, and you want to maintain a relationship with that person, where do you go from there if they're basically just closed-minded?
I think you say, I mean, I'm all about just sort of stating the elephant in the room, hey, I've noticed our relationship's sort of strained.
Yeah.
I don't want that. You're too important to me. You're too valuable to me. Can we put our opinions aside? Can we just focus on our
Kelli, Trump man bad or something.
Right,
and how could you, and then they go down that road. How could you? And why would you? And I didn't think you were like this. And
right.
It turns into an attack.
Here's my thing, I'm role playing with you. So here's my thing. I'm not ever, just because I believe something politically doesn't make me all of that. So I think it would help, for you to recognize, hey, I might believe in this, and that's okay. And we'll have to just agree to disagree on that.
Gotcha. Are you optimistic right now with, obviously COVID is it's something that none of us expected. Now, listen, this isn't storming the beaches at Normandy, but for most people, we've never experienced anything quite like this.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of how you react to this may have to do with your socioeconomic status as well. I assume that the more comfortable you are, the less it's impacting you.
I think so.
But we're seeing crime. We're seeing crime in the inner cities, increase at threefold, fourfold, murders, shootings, and this and that. We're talking about suicides that are increasing as well. From your standpoint, sociologically speaking, are we balkanizing ourselves more now because of this? And is that healthy for a culture and a society?
Are you saying, is it dividing us even more?
Because you have people locked in different places in the socioeconomic levels. Some people are, less angry. Some people are more angry. Some people are a lot more impacted by this than others.
I think yes. I think the simple answer is yes. And it's so sad. I mean, it really is. I mean, I think that obviously everything that's happened, that's gone on with Black Lives Matter and everything. I mean, I think it's been, eye-opening for a lot of people, which is a good thing, where it's like, okay, hey, people who are maybe in a different socioeconomic status can kind of wake up a little bit. So I think there is, I'm an optimist, as you can tell. So I think there's a little bit of okay, hey, people are sort of opening their eyes to things that maybe they didn't see before. But yes, I feel like in a physical way, I do think, people are probably more shut out than they normally would be.
It's interesting. I think I think we're going to be able to look back at this in 3, 5, 10, 50 years from now. And there's going to be a lot of books and movies and films and everything that are going to focus on this period that we're in right now. And there's going to be a million stories that are happening right now around us that we're not aware of. And we're going to be able to look back in hindsight. What are some of the stories or some of the issues that have come up? Obviously, you're not disclosing personal information here, that have just thrown you for a loop with during this period that we're in.
Good, bad, or both? What are you?
Anything that's just stunned you. I mean, it's hard to stun a therapist,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That is very true. Well, first of all, I mean, this has nothing to do with anything, but I'm just thinking out loud. I love that the animal shelters are, I mean, I was trying to get my son a guinea pig. I had to call 11 pet stores. So that makes me happy that the animals are doing really well. People are getting pets. So that actually, so there is, I like to look at the good things, but, so that surprised me because so many shelters are empty, which is great. Mm. On the negative side, let's see what stunned me. A lot of people, a lot of rash decision making, a lot of, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this person.
Rash decision making for big decisions?
Yeah, exactly.
Like what?
Like I was saying, this is not the time to evaluate your relationship, because I think that people are just so fed up and they're just so uncomfortable and they just want to get out. A lot more of that depression. I've seen, and this is important for your listeners to know too. I think a lot of people think of depression as just a sadness, and that is true, but there's also, it can look like just a lack of motivation. Like you're almost walking through quicksand. Like everything feels like an effort. And so I see a lot of that, and that's scary and so what I always recommend, I'll just say a lot, is like, go outside and take a walk, something, and, get those endorphins moving, get the sunshine, something, and don't wait for the feeling, take the action first. So a lot of people say like, oh, well, I'll take a walk when I feel better. And I always say, no, do the action and then you will feel better. So it's because your brain's going to say like, oh, I'm too tired, I don't want to do it. I'm like, no, just see that thought and kind of almost as a thought bubble passing on, and just take the action and then the feeling will come. But I've seen a lot of that. I think it's interesting to see the kids' point of view too. My younger son said when this first happened, we went to Ralph's and he said, Mom, everybody looks like a robber. And it's just so interesting to sort of see their viewpoint of like, what is this like for them? So that's been really interesting. I think it's just been a mixture of emotions. And I think that's important also to sort of check in about, is that like, some days you might feel angry, some days you might feel great, some days you might feel depressed. I mean, I think it is really this roller coaster of emotions that we're all going through.
I think rash decisions during this period would be idiotic, but if you're in a relationship with somebody that wasn't good before this,
right?
And now you're like,
yes.
There are moments where you do need to be away from somebody, right?
Absolutely. I do know some couples, sadly, who are separated during this time. It's just even harder because they're separated, but they're living in the same house, and it's just really hard. Mm-hmm. I think it's just really important to communicate what you need. Hey, I need some space right now. And say it in a really calm and do it when you're at that level 5, 6 before you're at that 10, because that's when just everything, is brushed aside. So it's really when you're calm and neutral and you can say, hey, I need some time, because you do. We're all going to need that. We all need that. And it's human. You're natural to want a little bit of space.
I think that there's a lot of folks out there right now that are feeling apathetic and depressed. There's only so many series on Netflix you can watch before you feel like a lazy bum. Yes. And so you're talking about endorphins and getting outside and walking. Getting outside and walking is really important today, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. And if you're not, I wrote a list. I did a seminar on how to cope during this isolation. And so I'll give you a couple of my ideas also. So aside from any type of exercise, and it's whatever you like to exercise. So a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like to lift weights. Okay, don't. Do what you like. Do you like kickboxing? Do you like yoga? So it's whatever you personally like to exercise. That'll get you motivated. Yeah. So there's a lot of free courses online right now. Why not learn something? I'm all about escape rooms. There's like, escape rooms that you can do online, which is kind of cool and get your brain moving.
What's an escape room?
So an escape room is, so they have them typically where you're physically in a room. You have like 60 minutes to get out with clues and things like that. So they have them all over the US. I mean, I imagine over the world too, but it's really cool. But then
these are online games?
Now they have them online where you can actually do an escape room online.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really fun. If you're into puzzles, they have puzzles online where you can actually play with another person. If you're craving that socialization, but you're just sort of like, there's nothing to say. What did you do today? I got up. There's an app called, thinking the name, House Party. And so you can actually play like WhatsApp Heads Up, or they've got like Pictionary. So you can have that socialization where you don't have to feel like, okay, I need to like tell somebody what I did today. I can just play.
Does it have the guy from Kid and Play with the big hair going up?
Remember him? That's so funny. So fun things like that. If you're into music, they've got live sets where you can just like listen live, or hear DJs live, things like that. So there's so many things that you can do. You just got to get a little creative with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the key is to move. It's to get up. Jordan Peterson, he says the biggest thing that you can do, when you get up in the morning is make your bed, because you've accomplished something.
True.
Right? Something as simple as minor as that.
Yes, exactly. It's true. It's a great way to start the day too.
Yeah. Yeah. I do it most of the time.
I don't,
of the time.
But I should.
Touching upon an earlier subject that we touched regarding the psychological impact of this short-term versus long-term. In the short-term, we're seeing right now, we're seeing depression, we're seeing couples that may, have to cope with things. We're seeing singles that are lonely. But when we talk about long-term, and I don't know how, you can really understand what's going to happen here until it actually happens, because this is unprecedented, right? So there's not really any case studies. Yeah. Nobody's going to go back to 1918 and say, okay, well, after the Spanish flu, this is what happened.
Right.
That lasted for 3 years, by the way. But just, I don't know if you've been reading because of your career and your expertise in this, but what are some of the other specialists, sociologists, psychiatrists, psychologists suggesting that they can expect to happen as we proceed forward here? It looks like we're going to be locked down again for quite some time. There's this second wave that's now hitting.
It's really interesting. I mean, I think everybody has their own opinion about it, but I think that one thing that I think would help that I suggest is, a lot of times there's 5 stages of grief that we always talk about. And lately they just added a 6th one, and it's meaning. And so I tell people, apply meaning to this time.
After acceptance is meaning.
No, it's, they're 5 stages, but you go back and forth and through them. Okay. So, but the last one that they've just recently added is meaning. And so, typically so this is grief. A lot of people think of grief as death, and this is a death. This is the death of the life that you thought you knew. It's suddenly changed, and it's, uncomfortable and all of that. So we are in grief. So how can we apply meaning to this? Where do you want your life to look differently? Were you unbalanced? So, I think if we can reframe it that way, where it's not like wasted. I think a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, I'm doing nothing. It's like, okay, well then let's do something. Let's apply meaning to this. Do you want to change your career? Do you want to change, other pieces of your life? I don't know. I think this is a great time to really reflect on all those things, because you're sitting with yourself, so you can really, you don't have those other distractions to sort of get you by. You can really look at that piece and have some self-reflection, which I think will help.
I guess I'm still in the denial phase.
Makes sense. And like I said, you can go through them daily, hourly. It's like 1 minute might be an acceptance, 1 minute denial, bargaining. I'll do anything for this not to happen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can see that from a macro perspective, right? I think, in March, a lot of us were in grief. We were kind of like, what is going on here? This is devastating. In the first couple of weeks, and then you're going into denial, like, oh no, this isn't happening. It's overwrought. The numbers are wrong. The politicians are wrong, whatever it may be. and then you do get into bargaining. And we saw before the Black Lives Matter protest that happened for altogether a different reason. But you did see protests from individuals, business owners, many of them right of center folks. They were going to city halls and state capitals because they were saying, end the lockdowns. I need to open my business. I guess that was the bargaining phase, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Could be.
So you're seeing this as a culture and a society kind of take its own form, aren't you?
Yes, 100%. Yes. Yeah. And it really is interesting to see how people experience it in different ways. And, like I said, with some people with depression, it's like, that could be that sadness. Other people could just be that lack of motivation. And the bargaining could be just with themselves, like, oh, well, I'll do anything not to get it. I'll, no, I need to open up my businesses. It's so funny how it manifests differently for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw something kind of out of left field for you here. I just thought about it, but one of the biggest complaints that I've heard over the past few months is that people don't want to hear. You're in Los Angeles. People don't want to hear from celebrities with their PSAs talking about put your masks on and let's sing Imagine together. I think you've done some work in as well in, I guess, not just radio, but TV and things like this as well. Do you get a sense that there's been some kind of, I guess, the diminishment, if that's a word, of celebrity, of sports stars that are coming out and kind of lecturing to people how to lead their lives during, this crisis right now? I'm hearing a lot of people complaining about that. You
mean diminishment because people aren't respecting them as much? Or
just like, don't sing Imagine to me on TV. I've got, you from your mansion, by the way, with 14 bathrooms while I'm sitting here with 2 bathrooms in my apartment. Right.
I agree with you, but I also think in general, I think people are just fed up. So it's like, I don't think it's so much about the celebrities. I think it's anybody. It's like, you're just more irritated. You're more irritable. You're bothered. You're cooped up. So anything's going to kind of set you off, I think.
The frustrations that we're all feeling right now, the masks are hiding that. It's kind of cool because I can give somebody the evil stink eye and they don't know if I'm like,
Absolutely. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You can get away with a lot of that.
You can.
Yeah.
But I miss the smiles. That's the tough part.
I know. And then you remove your mask and you realize you've just been chatting with somebody else. Such an idiot. That just happened. And we both looked at each other. We're like, Sean, Julie? No.
Were you guys both laughing? Because that would have been really funny.
We were cracking up after, and we saw each other in another aisle, 10 minutes later, and we're just like nodding,
Hey, exactly.
Hey, sorry. Glad your kids are going to college.
I was just going to say that you got the info on her kids now. Like next time.
I got the 911, whatever it's called, 411.
411, exactly.
Yeah. When was the last time anybody dialed 411?
That is so definitely our generation.
I have to teach my kids what that is. We actually dialed 853-1212 to know the time.
Oh my God! Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, and we actually did something, and I think you're too young for this. We actually had something in the 80s called the party line, and there was so you're driving around, and somebody would put up some flyer on a telephone pole, and it would say party line. It will be a phone number, and people will all call in. I have no idea who organized it or what the technology was, but there'd be like 20, 30 people chatting and talking and making jokes, and you'd meet up from there. It was the social media of our generation.
That's so funny.
Yeah, you had to do on the phone to dial in. But,
right.
I'm aging myself. I know. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
No, I do. I know what you're talking about. I didn't have that, but I
called 411 in time.
Exactly. Okay. We'll keep it there.
Okay. So that brings me to another question, again, out of left field. Okay. You're a mother, you have kids, you're a psychotherapist. You and I, we remember a life before social media where you actually had to talk to people and actually look them in the face and have a conversation. And you couldn't troll somebody and say something to them nastily that you can on Twitter or someplace else. talk to me about what you think the impact of social media is on this next generation. That our kids, they're all walking around like zombies. You could see once upon a time when we were able to walk into malls with other people, you'd see pods of teenagers walking together with their friends, and they were all looking down at their phones. Who are you texting? Your friends are with you.
Yes.
What's the impact of that long term as well?
I'm sad. I am. I'm really sad, and I'm scared because I think, as a therapist, for sure, connection is everything. And if our kids aren't learning the importance of that and they're not getting that's really scary. So I think that it's the parents' job to really enforce that and remind kids, okay, hey, listen, we're going to use electronics, we're going to use tech, but it's also really important to say, hey, we got to put that away. We need to have family dinner. We need to sit down. And, I have that at my house. It's like, hey, all right, it's dinner time. No one's on their phones. This is the time for us to connect. So even if you can do that once a day, breakfast, dinner, just have that time where you're really looking at each other, asking each other questions. There's no distractions. I think that's so important. And I think it's also important to explain to kids why that's important. Look, you're going to have a job interview one day. You're not going to be able to text your interviewer, hey, you're going to have to learn, and it is awkward and it is uncomfortable sometimes to have those conversations. So we really need to start them young so that they get skilled in that. So yeah, I
read an article a year or two ago, and it was about helicopter parents. Do you know the term?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
So there was this one kid, and apparently his parent came with him to the job interview at Google.
No. Oh,
and like literally walked into the interview,
wow.
And the HR, person was like,
yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. I had a teenage girl, not a teenage, I'm sorry. She was in college, and she called me and said, hey, my mom's on the phone. We're going to interview you together. I want to make sure that she likes you. It was very funny. It was like, oh my God, as a psychotherapist, I could analyze that for days. But yes, I think there is a lot of that. And I think what's so scary about that is that kids need to build resilience. And the only way to do that is to go through that discomfort. And I think a lot of parents think, well, I want to shield my kids from that pain. And there's a wonderful book called The Blessing of a Skinned Knee. And it talks about how kids need to fall. That's how you grow. That's how you learn.
Yes.
All your challenges, all your obstacles, that's when you build character. That's when you feel, that's when you gain self-esteem because you've gotten through it. If somebody's always doing things for you and coddling you, you can't build that. So yeah.
I ended up in the emergency room no less than a dozen times as a kid. It was like, it got to the point where my dad was like Norm from Cheers at the local emergency room, and because I was always, I was a stupid idiot, but I would ride a bike without shoes on and rip my feet apart, or go skateboarding without any t-shirt on and just my OP shorts and just rip myself apart on the asphalt. I did crazy stuff. We had the green machine and the orange wheel. And I know, again, I'm aging myself. And we did all of this fun, crazy stuff. We weren't bubble wrapped.
Right.
And today our kids are bubble wrapped. Yes. And where did that come from? How did our generation that grew up basically free range?
Yeah.
Okay, be home by dinner. That was for my mom. Be home by twilight, whatever, And she didn't know where we were. We were taking buses and going around and doing this and that, and somehow we survived. How did let's put it back on us? And
how did that change? Yeah.
Where did that come from? How did we go from free range kids to raising bubble wrap kids?
I think a lot of parents, it's their own anxiety, and they just project it on their children. Like a lot of that I see is like, parents being so anxious. And when you're anxious, what do? You want to control something. Okay, well, I can't control the environment. I can't control COVID. Or I can control my children and, what time they come home and what they do and, all of that. So I think it's it's a lot of anxiety that people are experiencing.
And where does that anxiety come from?
The world, like what's going on, different things. The world.
But we grew up under the threat of nuclear war. Our parents weren't crazy.
But I think there's also a lot more pressure now with, having to email somebody back. Like I think we had more set work hours when we were young that our parents sort of knew, okay, so I'm on from 9 to 5, but then it's sort of family time. And I think now it's so blurred and it's like, okay, somebody's emailing, they're expecting something. There's a lot of like, ADD kind of crazy, like, stuff going on.
You wrote the book on that, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the title?
It's Thriving with ADHD.
And that sold a lot of books.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, both my boys have it, so I understand it fairly well. But there's a lot of distractions in our world. So can make you a little bit like all over the place and, build a lot more of that anxiety.
So you think our generation's angst or anxiety, if you will, comes from a place of just being overstimulated, too much pressure, too many things to do, too many things to get done?
Yes.
Is it too much stimulus?
I think it's all of the above. I do.
Okay.
I think it's all of the above. And I also think it's a lot of, I just don't think we're so present anymore. It's so much about the next thing. And so I'm a big proponent of meditating and just sort of, reeling it back. We're okay at this moment. It's what I tell a lot of my anxious clients, like, just, say that mantra, like, I'm okay at this moment. So, cause I think we're so focused on like, what's going to happen next? Well, what am I going to do? It's like, we're okay with this at this moment. And so
it's so good for us to turn that off. And my phone's pinged a dozen times since we started this interview. And at the back of my mind, I've got emails, I've got this, I've got that to go to. The best thing that we could do, I've just found this out from my own experience, and you talk about meditation, and I think there's different ways to meditate, is for me, when I climb a mountain or something, I'm out of cell range.
Yes.
And for the first 3 hours, I'm jonesing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I keep going to my phone almost like it's like a Pavlovian response.
Yes.
And then something happens, Kelli. Something all of a sudden, it's like a peace just falls upon you. And you no longer want to look at the phone. And 2 days later, when you're coming back down the hill, you're almost like, oh God, do I have to turn it back on? It's going to be just overloaded with messages and notifications and things. That maybe we are overstimulating ourselves a bit.
Well, when you tell me that story, what comes to mind for me is that, like, you need to ease off a little bit. I know it's what you do for work and things like that, but to me, that's like screaming, I need a little more balance.
Yeah.
Because it's very black and white.
But I do get that. I noticed that for me personally, but I don't know if a lot of people do take that advice though.
Right. No, I agree with you.
I had a hike this afternoon after I worked all day. I needed to, just to clear my mind. So that I know that, because if I don't, I'll be depressed. I can't do that.
Sure.
So
but you're aware. You've got that self-awareness and you know what you need.
Medium rare. So, okay. Well, listen, I feel a lot more optimistic after speaking with you. I don't think the fate of the world is we're not going down the crapper at this point. You think we're going to come out of this and people are going to find a new semi-normal is what I'm hearing.
I think what's the other alternative? You can come out depressed, or you can come out more reflective. You can come out more positive. We have a choice. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of how I look at it, because we're in this situation that we can't control. So the only thing that we can control is our attitude and our thoughts around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is fascinating. And I really greatly appreciate you taking the time sharing this with us. I think these are the types of discussions that people need to hear. We talk culture and politics and all the issues that everybody's screaming about all the time. And, occasionally I'll do an episode like this where I don't talk about politics. We talk about poker or, something else. And this is one of those meditation episodes for us where we're just decompressing a little bit here.
That's cool. I like that.
Tell everybody where they could find you, your practice, and you do stuff on Zoom. So I assume you'll take clients anywhere now, right? Around wherever.
Well, they have to be in California, because I'm based in California. But yeah, so you can find me. I'm Kelli, Kelli, and then last name is Miller. And so it's KelliMillerTherapy.com. Yep. And then my Instagram is Kelli Miller Therapy. Easy enough.
Well, we've got that in the Chiron below you here, so people can find you and check you out. And you've got some great articles on there, and you're continually writing articles, and your books are on there as well.
Yes, it should be.
Okay. Yeah, everybody definitely check that out. Kelli Miller, licensed therapist, MSW, LCSW, relationship expert, and author. And can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll have to have you back on. And you're going to come and join me on the radio show next week, right?
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll check in with you real soon. And folks, greatly appreciate you spending some time with us here at Whiskey Politics. We'll be back again next time. Again, don't forget, subscribe at YouTube. Find us at Range Broadcasting, Ricochet, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, and everything everything else. You'll find it all. We'll be back again real soon. Cheers.